Beck's out of town. I can kick her.
That was on live, so. We're good.
And now we're good to go?
Yes, sir, always.
Well, it is Thursday night, everybody. That means it's time for AMA, Ask Me Anything. My name is Pete Baker. We're with Alta Vista Assembly in beautiful bucolic. Although tonight, the bucolic in our fair city, let me finish the sentence, beautiful bucolic East Bakersfield, it was a flood zone, Skippy, coming across town just now.
It was.
It was
all over the place. It's been flooding.
Deluge.
Ash Road right there. Ming has been flooding.
Everything.
Everything.
Anyway, we're a great church in beautiful bucolic East Bakersfield. We'll be with you for the next 30 minutes taking questions that have come our way. And likely some in the audience watching have sent those questions. So I know you're waiting for our best shot at it. I am joined tonight, as always, by Matthew.
Oop, not Pastor Tino.
No, I'm joined by Matthew, who is moderating and mumbling at the same time.
I clicked the wrong graphic, so...
You're a multitasking, moderating mumbler.
I'm not doing very well today. Hello, everybody.
I didn't give you your intro yet. What I want you to do is, at the proper time, greet the people and tell them how we play the game. I think that poppy soda has gotten to your brain.
I think it's getting to my stomach. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this rather damp Thursday evening. We're going to be asking Pete here some questions, at least for the next 30 minutes or so.
You know, one of these days, we're going to turn it around, and I'm going to ask you some questions.
I'm waiting for that. You go ahead.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Algebra.
Let's do it. Anyway, so that's how it works. We have some questions that people have sent in throughout the week to us. We weren't here last week, so we have some of those. And so we're going to go ahead and get started, okay?
Well, let's rock and roll. Fire when ready, sir.
First thing we're going to do...
Oh, this is our new feature.
This is our new feature.
Called?
Cap or No Cap.
Which, explain that to the uninitiated.
Wait, hold on. Let's see if this graphic's going to play. So cap or no cap. Cap means that it is not true, and then the graphic didn't shoot. I'm sorry, guys. But then the no cap means it is true. So what happened is somebody sent in a video, and this was my niece's idea, actually. My niece, Abigail in Texas, thank you. So they send TikTok videos that they want your reaction to, that they would like your input on. So tonight we have one of those.
I'm all over TikTok.
You are. You really are. You kind of are. You have videos on TikTok. You didn't know that, but okay. I made videos.
So shoot.
So we're going to go ahead. Let me just get this set up here. All right, ready?
In the Old Testament law was never once money. Even when the whole last section of tithing was in times where they used money as much as agriculture. It was also always for the Levites or for the poor, right? And that only happened every 3 years. None of it.
So that was it. That was the whole thing.
Woo-hoo. Well, once again, my reaction is thank you, Internet. What this fella has done is conflated, like, in that brief, what was that, 25 seconds?
It was
He's conflated like 7 different things. And I'm not going to untangle them all. Just beware of anything you see online. He was incorrect on almost everything he said. It is true that tithing was instituted in an agricultural setting, in an agricultural context. That is true. But the principles of tithing, 1/10, the word means tithe. The word tithe is an Old English word translated from the Hebrew that means what the Hebrew meant, 1/10. And it was agricultural, obviously, to begin with, but we don't live in an agricultural age right now. Not hardly any of us are farmers. And so our tithe has to be taken care of in a different way. And the coin of the realm is the coin of the realm. We use money today. So that, because things like that have changed, doesn't invalidate. I don't know if this fellow would like, somebody to bring a bushel of squash into the church. I don't know exactly what he was saying. To follow his logic to the end, it would get kind of absurd. But anyway, no, tithing is scriptural. I believe it's scriptural for believers today. People often say, well, the the mother of all tithing scriptures is in Malachi, that talks about wherein have you robbed me? You robbed me in the tithes and offerings, what is over and above. And it talks about a curse that will come if you do that, and a blessing that will come if you do take care of it, and you're faithful in that. The New Testament also talks about on the first day of the week, bring what the Lord has prospered you with. And so the ideas carry through, and that was spoken to a group of people that did understand tithing. Whether you allow this guy, they understood it agriculturally or money, it doesn't matter. I do notice that Jesus had a case where he's looking at the treasury box and he sees people coming in and they're giving monetary gifts. That's the point of the story with the woman with the 2 mites. So the idea that people didn't use money, in their offerings or in their tithe, that's it won't wash. But anyway, people say, well, the great verses about tithing are in the Old Testament, principally in Malachi 3, and therefore it doesn't apply in the New Testament. It is in the Bible. Because it's Old Testament, I think people get the idea that the word old means it's not as good as, or it's been superseded by. None of that's the case. It's the Hebrew scriptures, the New Testament scriptures. It's the scriptures. It's the Word of God. So we need to get over that strange hurdle that says if it's Old Testament, it doesn't apply. The 10 Commandments are not in the New Testament, but I don't think the New Testament endorses people murdering each other. So it gets nonsensical when they have that false dichotomy like that. So no, I believe, and I've seen it demonstrated in my own life, but also in the lives of many, many people, that if we honor God in anything, God will honor us, and that does include our finances as well.
So it's cap then, is what you would say. Is being a fan of comic books and superheroes the same as idol worship?
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Some people get crazy with that stuff.
Well, look, it's been a long time since I've looked at comic books, but I was a huge consumer of comic books at one time. And
what was your favorite? That's interesting.
I love the Fantastic Four.
Oh.
I really like I like the stretchy guy. But anyway, I was a real lover of comic books, and we would go down to the drugstore or the newsstand and wait till it was delivered from the truck, to get the newest edition. So, but it's been a while since I've looked at them, so I can't comment totally on all the comic books today. But no, it's not. They're not idols. It's fantasy. It's myths. I would equate it, again, I haven't looked at a lot of comic books lately. I think there probably is some objectionable material in some of them now, but that is the age we live in. Everybody's got to push the envelope and act like they're brave that way. But it's myth making, it's stories, it's fiction. It's obviously fiction. I mean, to begin with, nobody apart from you has muscles like the guys in the comic books. So it's all a story. It's all made up. No, it's not idols. Now, could you take it and turn it into something that, that affected your spiritual life or your relationship with God or something like that? Well, sure, but you could do that with anything. So I don't think it's fair to single out comic books as particularly evil or egregious in that way. It's myth making. It's fun. It's cool art. And sometimes the stories are pretty good. So there you go. There wouldn't be a Marvel franchise if there wasn't something worthwhile to watch there.
But you don't watch comics anymore at all?
I don't read a lot of comics now, no. But I did love them.
Was the girl mentioned in Acts 16 through 28 an evil watcher?
Okay, I don't know what that term evil watcher is. Watcher is a phrase that's used in some of the Hebrew scriptures, but always it's a good context. It's a group of divine beings that are doing God's bidding, and I don't want to get into that, but they're on the positive side. They're on the good side of things. So to my knowledge, there are no evil watchers in Scripture. And I'm not sure how you would equate evil watchers with this young girl here. This is basically the story of the first time the gospel goes to Europe. It gets out of the Middle East, gets out of Asia, as it was called then. And Paul takes the gospel under the direct inspiration of the Holy Spirit. In answer to a vision, come over and help us, he takes it to Europe for the very first time. And as we know from subsequent history, it will get quite a foothold there and affect all of civilization. But this is the first time the gospel has touched ground in Europe. It's in the city of Philippi, which is a Roman colony, which means that it's a little implanted, transplanted little bit of Rome right there. It's got its forum, it's got its racetracks and its games and its government buildings and magistrates and all the rest. It's a little bit of Rome. There's a provincial governor there. And he gets in some trouble because as he is presenting the message of good, and he's had to start in a very unusual way for him. He normally would go into a synagogue, and there he would begin, because people had a basis in Hebrew scriptures, he would begin to preach Christ from the scriptures. That was the Bible he had. It's the Bible they had. And it would resonate with them that way. In this case, he cannot find even 10 Jewish men called a minyan. And there is no synagogue, apparently, in Philippi. He encounters some people that are God-fearers. They're leaning in the direction of the God of Israel, mostly women, meeting at a riverbank. And that's where he starts. And so he's establishing the church, he and his friend Silas and some others. And they encounter a young lady who causes them no end of grief because she is, in some sense, demonized. She's been set upon by a demon. Now, I know it's popular. There's some Christian websites and Christian teachers and people that purport to be experts and all this sort of thing that make a distinction between demon oppression and demon possession. The Bible uses the word demonized. It just means somebody who is somehow afflicted or tormented in some measure, some degree by ugly spirits. Jesus would call them unclean spirits or impure spirits. We know them as demons. And this young girl, that is the case for her. Now, she is a slave to the enemy, but she's also a slave in fact. She has slave owners that physically own her. She is chattel slave. And they like the idea that she is set upon by this demonic spirit because the lying spirit somehow has convinced people that she can tell the future or tell fortunes. And that was not unusual in that setting. And she is what is known in that context as a pythoness. The idea was that you had a snake inside of you that was informing you. It goes back to the Delphic oracles, which are an important part of Greek theology and Greek thinking. And she may have been commissioned there, or who knows. But she is set upon by this demonic spirit. It torments her, but it gives people the idea whether in fact it can or it does not. After all, it's a lying spirit, so I would expect it's lying. It convinces some people that she can tell the future for them or tell fortunes, and so she charges. So it's a revenue stream for her owners, for her slave masters. Long story short, Paul delivers her. He gets annoyed with her, actually, because she is interrupting their good work, the message of good. And so he calls her out. Actually, he calls out the spirits that are in her, and she is delivered. We think of it as exorcism. She is delivered, and she is set free. And everybody's happy about that, most especially the girl. But the people that are not happy are her owners, because now they feel like they've been defrauded of their income stream. And so they're the ones who have he and Silas hauled before the judges, before the magistrates, and they are against Roman custom and law because they are Roman citizens. They are summarily beaten with rods, with the fasci, the bundle of sticks. We get our word fascist from that. And it's against the law for Roman citizens to be beaten. They don't even ask them if they are. They don't ask for their papers or their identification or anything. They just beat the daylights out of them, have them imprisoned, and there's a supernatural deliverance from that prison. He enlists the help of the jailer and the jailer and his family. They hear the gospel and they become followers of Jesus. And Paul and Silas then leave that part of the world for another city, and they continue on their way through northern Greece, eventually to Athens and Corinth. But the girl she's demonized. again, I don't know the reference to a watcher applies here. I don't think it does. But she is demonized. She's set upon by a demon. She is delivered. She is, again, what they would understand as a pythoness. And part of the pythoness thing was there would often be like a ventriloquism type thing. There would be voices that were ascribed to a spirit or a god or an idol or something. Was some of it hocus pocus? Probably.
Because this was after the cross, right? What?
This is after the cross and resurrection.
So they have no more power, right?
The demonic spirits, and we've got a question later
Yeah.
about that, and I'll flesh that out a little bit more. The demonic spirits at this point, they have been stripped of their authority. We'll look at that in a moment. But that doesn't mean the enemy can't play his trump card, which is lying. He's a deceiver. Jesus referred to him, his favorite way to refer to him was the father of lies. He is a deceiver. That's what devil means. And he knows how to do that. He is very practiced at lying, especially to human beings. And he can trip us up just with his deception. So the impression is reality. Whether or not she actually could tell the future or fortunes, it's really irrelevant. People thought she could, and that would be the enemy lying to them, lying to her. Who knows? He is, again, the master of lies.
This is the question. If the devil can only lie to us and has no real power over us, doesn't that mean demon possession is fake?
Again, these terms, demon oppression, demon possession, they're not New Testament terms. The term is demonized. You've been demonized. You've been set upon by this ugly spirit. Now, it seems that there could be degrees of severity. And again, I'm no expert. I have seen people that have been demonized. I've seen demonized people set free. And it's real. It's real. It's real.
1 second.
It's real on both ends.
Pepper.
The people that are demonized, that's real. They're not putting on. People that are demonized, they suffer. They're tormented. I mean, that's all very real. And their deliverance is very real. Again, that's the part I've been privileged to see, is people set free from that. And when it happens, it's very dramatic. It's not like on the TV evangelist, and it's not like in the Hollywood movies. It's more like what the book of Jude says, where it talks about one of the archangels says to the demonic spirits that have come to, for whatever weird reason, steal the body of Moses. It says they did not pronounce a railing accusation against them. In other words, it wasn't a stem winder, it wasn't a big wind up, it wasn't a lot of drama, it wasn't a lot of flash. It was just simply leave. And Jesus said, we as believers, we have power over the darkness. He says it this way, you will have power to cast out the evil one. We have that power. He's transferred that authority to us in some sense, or made it available to us. But these things that in the Hebrew scriptures were the gods of the nations that caused so much trouble for Israel, Paul identifies as what we think of as demons in the New Testament. Same spirits. And they cause us fits today. However, at the cross and resurrection event, their authority, their power was taken away. And we know that because Jesus says in a scripture that's familiar to most churchgoers, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 18, and 19. Jesus approaches his followers for the very last time on the planet, and he comes close to them and he says, here's what you need to know. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. In other words, whatever authority and power those principalities and dominions, what Paul will identify as demonic, whatever power they had, going back to their days as rival gods to Yahweh, it was taken away after the cross and resurrection, leaving them with only one power, but it's one that they know how to wield really well, and that is deception, that is lying. And so what that means is every time there is something ugly that happens, whether it's on a micro or a macro level, every time a child is molested, or there's domestic violence, or a woman is violated, or there's genocide, or some awful tragic thing that one human does to another, it means not that the devil made them do it. He has no power that way. He can't force his hand anymore. He used to, but since the cross and resurrection, he can't. But what he can do is lie. And so what it means is every time there's an ugly display, whether it's on an international level or it's in the confines of somebody's private home, if it's ugly and it's hurtful and it damages people, and it even damages the perpetrator, what it means is somebody has at that point believed a lie. Somebody believed the enemy's lie. He does have the power to lie. He does not have the power to force his will anymore. But he can convince people to act out. Again, his abilities at lying are pretty extensive because he's had a lot of practice. And he can get people to act in certain ways, hysterical ways, ways that we would think would be compatible with somebody being demonized. But what's scariest of all, really, is the thought that the enemy may be controlling somebody through his lies, and they not act out in the way that you see in, the Exorcist movies or something like that, or the TV evangelists would have you believe. No howling, no craziness, no convulsions. And what's frightening to me is that there could be people, and I believe there are people, that are calm, cool, and collected, but they are completely demonized because they believed a lie. They have subscribed to the enemy's
So is
lies.
demonization and stuff like that just them believing in that lie? It's not actually the demon
Who
living inside
who
them?
Who knows the layers of what the enemy can do? And I don't pretend to know that. I only know what Jesus says, that he's a master liar. He is, in fact, the father of lies. He's the originator of lies. And so he knows better than anybody how to deceive us and how to get us to act out, how to manipulate. And at this point, post-cross and resurrection, because Jesus has all authority and power. And Ephesians, if you read it carefully, and a couple places in Colossians, it talks about how there was some kind of an announcement that was made to those powers after the cross and resurrection, letting them know that they had failed greatly in their scheme to unseat God by killing Christ. And in fact, that's when their powers were taken from them.
All right,
He is a liar.
Yes.
And he makes us, one of his great lies, he goes two extremes with his lie. To either cause people to say, oh, he doesn't exist, that's a myth, that's a man in a red suit, that's medieval, silliness. He doesn't exist. He's very pleased when people think that. But to go the other extreme, the other end of the spectrum, to say that he's a rival God, that's a very Manichaean idea. He's not a rival God. He's not a rival to Yahweh at all. He's a created being, and he's a failed created being. That's why at the temptation of Jesus, when he comes to Jesus, he says, if you are the Son of God, because the enemy, the devil, was a son of God. He's described in the Old Testament as a son of God. He's a failed son of God. Jesus is the successful son of God. And so the devil is more aware of that than anybody else.
All right, last question here. In 2 Kings 3:26 through 27, the king of Moab was able to drive Israel away by offering his oldest son as a burnt offering on the wall. Does this indicate that another god besides Yahweh had some kind of power over man?
Okay, I won't even turn to it. What we're dealing with here is a character by the name of King Mesha, M-E-S-H-A, Mesha. He is a king of the Moabites. He's a Moabite king over Moab, which is kind of an early offshoot from the Hebrew people. They're sort of distant cousins. Anyway, he's the king of Moab, Mesha. And in the Hebrew scriptures and in the ancient Near East in general, this isn't just confined to Jewish thinking, but the idea was prevalent, and they accepted it as part of their worldview. It was their reality. And I believe it is reality itself, that different nations were identified by their patron god, and that the nation was bound up in their god. Uh, the Moabites' god was Chemosh, a particularly nasty, malevolent god. The people of Israel, their God is Yahweh, the Lord. Mesha is such a fanatical follower of his God that in a military conflict with Israel, there was a perennial conflict there going back to the time when the people of Israel came out of Egypt and out of the 40 years of wandering, and they wanted to go through Moab, and Moab said nothing doing and caused them no end of grief, and made their trip a lot harder, and was an early harasser of the people of Israel as they moved into the land. So the animosity went back a long way, and Moab's god, Chemosh, they identify very heavily with him, as Israel does with Yahweh. And it's part of their national identity. And he is such a fanatical follower that in another skirmish with Israel, Moab with Israel, it's not going well for Moab. And so Mesha, as the king, he takes measures into his own hands and he sacrifices his own son. He perhaps would have thrown him into a fire as a sacrifice directly to his national God. That's how fanatically devoted he was to it. So the question the person is asking is,
Does this indicate that another god besides Yahweh had some kind of power over man?
oh, most definitely. And we don't have time to go into it, but it's what's known as the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. The idea that the supernatural is much closer than we imagine, and really using a word like supernatural is misleading. It's just the way it is. It's reality. And that the supernatural, it can impinge on us, and we have some kind of influence over it at times through our prayer life, chiefly. But anyway, the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, the idea is that God's original plan, Yahweh's original plan, was that these lesser divine beings would help him in administrating the earth and the peoples of the earth, the nations of the earth, the ethnes of the earth. The word nations is ethne, and it means simply people groups, not necessarily territorial, but people groups. And he allotted, it says in Deuteronomy 32, these divine beings some authority over different people groups, various ones over different people groups. They were good divine beings, but they mess up. At the same time, he says he will choose, because they messed up, he will choose a nation for himself. It will be Jacob, Israel. That becomes his focus. And beginning with Father Abraham, the idea is he's not being exclusive with one nation, except to this point, that out of that nation, he tells Abraham, the nation that will come from Abraham, we know as Israel, the Hebrew people, that he will eventually bless the whole earth. He will bless all nations through this one nation. And he has to do that because those divine beings he's put in charge have failed. Psalm 82 talks a lot about that. Psalm 89 mentions it as well. We don't have time tonight. But those become, even in their fallen state, they become the gods of those nations. And they are in rebellion to Yahweh, and they cause no end of grief. And they're the ones that you see in the pages of the Old Testament: Baal, Dagon, Chemosh, Molech, and a host of others, Rimmon, a whole host of others. These different nations all have their own God, and their nationality is bound up in the God that they worship. And there's some cautions there for us today too. We are seeing the rise in our nation, but in other nations as well, some pretty radical ideas about nationalism. It goes way beyond patriotism, and it almost makes the nation the most important thing. You could almost say that we're not just worshiping the gods of the nations, but we're worshiping the nation as a god. It's a very dangerous thing, and we're seeing some rise of that, and we've seen it before, most especially in Nazi Germany and places like that. So it's a frightening thing when people embrace the nation as their god. But these people, their worldview was your nationality is bound up with your God. This guy, Mesha, same thing. Yes, his God did have some sway over him. It was an ugly God. It was what Jesus will later call an impure spirit, a dirty spirit. Paul will just level with us and say these were actually demons. That's what we know them as. But they were national gods, they were rival gods, and yes, they did have sway. But again, post-cross and resurrection, their power, their authority has been stripped from them. Jesus has it all. All they can do to us is lie.
But so sacrificing to other gods pre-cross
And resurrection
would work and would.
Oh, it could work. They could throw the lever in your behalf. You know, it was limited. Again, they are not the equal or the opposite of Yahweh. Just to set your hair on fire, these gods were known by the same name, Hebrew word that's used for Yahweh, Elohim. It's a plural word, means gods. It's translated into English as gods. It means divine beings. God is a divine being. Yahweh is a divine being. These lesser things. We know some of them as rival gods. We know some of them as angels. We know some of them as seraphim. Some of them as spirits. They go by different names and they have different functions. Sometimes their titles, the names we know them by, angels, seraphim, are designators of status, other times of their nature, sometimes of their work, their tasks. They don't all have the same task. And again, some of the ugly ones are rival gods. We know some as angels and seraphim, throne guardians, and different things. But the ugly ones did have power. They were Elohim. They were lesser gods. Yahweh is an Elohim. These divine beings, also Elohim. But the point is, no other Elohim is Yahweh. So don't let your hair catch fire when I say there are many gods, if you want to use that word. There are many divine beings. And some of them are malevolent, and some of them are sinister, and some of them never fell, and they're still working for the good side. They're still with Yahweh. They're still loyal. They're still part of His family. So it's kind of a fascinating thing. This is the kind of stuff we talk about on Tuesday night in our deep dive Bible study, Second Look. So if you're in our fair city and you're free at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, you may want to stop by. But this is the kind of stuff we dig into. And these are the things in our Bible that if we see them the way the people that originally wrote it and read it see it, it opens up the scripture for us. And as we begin to connect these dots, these weird points in the Bible that usually get explained away, or they get talked down, or they get ignored, we just don't talk about that. When you begin to drill down on those, and then you start connecting those dots, all of the rest of Scripture kind of opens up for you. And you begin to see a grander plan than you may have imagined. So we've got to stop there. But again, if you're interested and you're in our area, 6 o'clock on Tuesday night is when we delve into a lot of this.
All right, that's all we have time for.
Well, then that's all we will do. We are with Alta Vista Assembly, and if you're thinking of joining us on this coming Lord's Day, 10 o'clock is our English service, 2 o'clock is a Spanish, 5 o'clock another English service, as well as our prayer service, and 7 o'clock yet another Spanish service. So it's a busy place throughout the day, 10, 2, 5, and 7. And you can come at any of those times. You may want to come on our Tuesday night Second Look study. You can check out our website and it'll direct you a little bit more about what's going on. But we do all of that at 529 Crawford Street in Bakersfield, California. And if you're in the area, you would be most welcome. If you're not part or attached to a good church family, we would count it an honor if you'd come and check us out, or check us out on our website as well. We always drop our Sunday message and Sunday worship 2 o'clock and 2:15 on our Facebook page, the Alta Vista Assembly Facebook page, and the YouTube channel.
And Instagram. And then the next,
Instagram.
on Monday, it gets posted on the website.
There we go. So you can find it there, and you can go back and look at old archive.
There's a playlist on our Facebook of all of them, all 101 episodes. And it's called
That's
Ask Me
right.
Anything.
This is the 101st episode.
101st, right now.
Congratulations.
And then our
Congratulations.
February 4th is our actual anniversary in 2 days. And I believe we started, in 2020?
I think we started during COVID time.
So it'd be COVID hit March 2020.
Okay.
So it was right before COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've been doing this for 4 years.
See how smart you were to have us start this before COVID when we had to lock down? We could still
We may
do
have-
this.
I don't know. I got to look at the tapes. We got to check the tapes to see the exact start date.
Anyway, you can go back and check out some that we've already done.
We've
in the
been doing a
past.
long time.
Yeah, we've been doing a few. And you can stay connected to us that way, or you can check us out live. But in either case, as I say, let's do our